This is part 3 of my conversation with Lloyd George, and today we're talking all about brand deals and influencer expertise. Now, I will highlight before we get into our conversation today, if you have not heard or seen, I launched a new membership program. It's $11 a month, and the enrollment is always open. In this membership, you will receive every resource you need when it comes to launching, growing, monetizing, and getting sponsors for your show, securing brand deals, partnerships, all of that fun stuff. There's so much to check out. So grab the link in the show notes and go and take a look. Let me know if you have any questions at all, because I know that you're going to find this resource super, super valuable. And it's kind of a no-brainer at $11 a month. I'm just saying, I'm just throwing it out there. But today's conversation, we are spilling all of the tea on brand deals and influencer know-how. We are learning the ropes from the ground up, from everything that you need to know, from creating a media kit, pitching your brand deals, finding people you want to collaborate with, creating partnerships, how to price it, all of the above. It is all included in today's episode and so much more. I know you're going to gain so much value from today's conversation, so let's get into it. Lloyd, welcome to part 3 of the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here all month long. I'm so excited to be talking about podcasting.
All month long. I'm so excited too. Okay, we are talking about brand deals in this episode today. Something that I've done a little bit of, but not a lot of, not to the scale that you're doing it, and also the creators that you know and the people that you've met. So how did you start with brand deals? Like, how did you get started?
So I think my very first brand deal was like, I think it was like $150 or $200 maybe. I don't remember the brand, but I remember them just messaging me on like TikTok. No. I remember seeing another creator that was saying like he made like an insane amount of money. It was maybe like 10,000 a month just from brand deals. And I was like, what? You could make that much money on like social media? Obviously now I know that like people make a lot more money than that, but like I was just like, that is bizarre. And I remember telling my wife about it and she was like, huh, like how could you start getting paid for brand deals? And I was like, I'm going to look into that. And that's when I just started being like aware of like, I was reaching out to brands, trying to do work for free, but all with the intention of knowing that like eventually I want people to pay me for this. And this wasn't too long ago. This is maybe about a year and a half ago is when I started trying to reach out to people for free and saying like, would you pay me if I made content for you? May of last year is I think when I made my first, it's like someone actually paid me to create like a video for them. And I think it was like 150 or $200. And it was a podcast host. And I think I was recording like one TikTok video for them. I didn't even like negotiate or do anything. They were just like, hey, do you want to make a video? We'll pay you $150. I was like, done. That's all I needed to hear. And that was like my first deal.
Paid.
Yeah, that's when I got started. But that was just like the confidence, the thing I needed to happen to become confident that I could even do this.
Okay, I love that. It's like that little validation piece.
Yeah.
It's like that thing where you're just kind of like sitting and you're like, I'll say God, but people say universe, source, creator. Like you're like, just put like that one sign in my awareness that this could potentially be a thing that I would do. And he's like, there you go, take that.
That's such a great point. And the funny thing is like that never ever stops. Like I feel like for me, that was a thing then like God, can I even like do this? Like, okay, like God, I know I can do this. They've paid me. I can do it. And then recently, like I did some work for like Spotify, and I think to the rest of the world, I don't know that anyone knows this, but that specifically meant a lot to me because I remember feeling like I had just told my wife like, okay, I figured out what I want to do and I figured out my lane. I want to create content for brands that's not based on me. As like, so I don't want it to be based on my following. I don't want it to be based on like me being a big creator. I want people to just look at me and say, this guy is like creative. He knows how to communicate good idea. He knows how to create good videos. Let's hire him. Spotify was the first big brand to do that for me. And up until that point, a lot of smaller brands didn't want to work with me. After I worked with Spotify, I kid you not, I was able to like add them to my portfolio, use those like videos as like resources of like the type of work I could create. And so to me, Spotify was that like, God, just show me that this concept will work and I'll know that like this is a good idea. And so to your point about like God just like showing us that it's possible and then we can like go through and like keep going.
It's so true. It's that piece I think that, okay. I'm not trying to go a whole left field on the podcast about like religion and all that kind of stuff. But like,
Right.
Okay, but we're going to go there for a hot second because people think that, it's just only in like times that are really difficult that you ask for signs and guidance.
Yep.
But I don't necessarily think that's the case. Like I feel like you can do that all the time.
Yep.
And I do that a lot in business too.
I think to myself often, if I can do X, Y, and Z, okay, this is especially when I was leaving corporate to do my production business full time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had just said, like, okay, I was interviewing for a job, and the job was like, it was a $15 an hour admin job. And I had just come from like corporate where I was literally making like, I don't know, $55 an hour, 60. You know what I mean? So it was a
Yeah.
pretty big jump. Okay, it was pretty steep,
Yeah.
steep jump back the opposite way. But I was like, it's fine. Like, no pride, no ego. Like, it is what it is. I was like, I'm leaving corporate to make this jump and to go into the space, and because this is what I want to do. I want to have my own business, like whatever. And I was willing to do whatever. And I said, God, like, if this is meant for me, this business, I said, do not let me get this job. And they literally were like, I think you're too overqualified. And I was like, oh, okay.
How is
Very
that
interesting.
possible?
I was like, okay. And so I didn't
Yeah.
take the job. Like, I think they may have offered it to me, and they had said, like, you know, if you're sure. And I was like, I don't think I am, because I was like, okay, I was like, hold on here. I was like, all I need to do is like one consultation call a week, and I'll literally make what I would be making. You know what I mean? I was like, hold on here. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Anyways, okay, now I'm
Yeah.
really digressing, but I do want to focus it back in on. Go ahead.
Just one quick point
Please,
about that is
please.
I think that like sometimes like say you're working like a job, right? And I'm pro like people working jobs, like
Me
no
too.
shade to people working jobs. Like I say you're working a job and then you quit your job
Someone's
to
got to
get
do it. It's
more.
just not going to be me. I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
And then you quit your job, right? To like open up capacity for you to do your thing. I feel
Yeah.
like there is like this, it's hard to describe because I do think that like, it's like when you create room for the thing, there is capacity for that thing to be filled. So it's like you could have a job and still be trying to
Mm.
get clients, and you just don't
Mm-hmm.
get clients. But the moment you quit your job, it's like you get those clients. And I'm not saying that the only way to get those clients is to have a job per se, because like I'm like by day, like I'm still like a freelance project manager, and I think that like helps me as
Cool.
a creator because like all of the money I can use as a creator now, I can just like reinvest it. But I do know like of several people that like quit their job and then like they got a huge opportunity or they got like those few clients. And I think a lot of those things just won't happen while you're still at your job sometimes.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, because I can tell you for sure, starting my production company, I never would have been able to take on any of the clients that we took
Yep.
on if I didn't have the time and the capacity in my life. You know what I mean? And even
Yeah.
now, as we continue to grow, like, it's very much, we take on a new client, there's a process and a system. Everyone on the team has their responsibility. It's not just me. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So it allows it to grow bigger.
Yep.
But okay,
And just one
go ahead,
question
go
for
ahead.
you is just like I know you mentioned you had some experience working with brand deals. I'm just curious, like
Mm,
how was your experience and how did you like it? I know lots of, I mean, Dylan and I talk all the time, and he's like
yeah.
we're like the complete opposite. He's like, I hate brand deals. I don't like brand deals. I rather work with clients. And I'm just like, I don't like clients. I rather do brand deals. But how was your experience working with
Mm.
like brands?
Okay, it's a really good question. I feel like I would be like a happy medium of both, to be honest with you. Like,
Mhm.
I love working with my clients. I love being in the production space. There's something to me about being a woman producer that's really fucking cool to me. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, I know we see a lot more of it now today, but it just always felt like something that was like, you know, it was just, it makes me really proud. You know
Yep.
what I mean? To be able to do this work. On the flip side, I am not mad at making, 10K a month
Yep.
doing a couple videos. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And so I think that the ones that I did were back when it was for my Happiness Happens podcast. And those ones were really great because it was literally a partnership with a company for this like meditation app. And it was
Mm.
an app, no, a vision board app, sorry. And it was an app that I was using anyways. And so it felt easy, but I will
Yep.
say I didn't know what to do at the time because it was a couple years ago, and like I didn't understand what to do at the
Yep.
time. Like, I didn't know, how do you create a video? How should I compose this video? What should I do? What should I talk about? What should I say? How should I do it?
Yep.
And they didn't give me any guidelines either. And so I think it depends, cuz like some brands will tell you like, we want this, and then some of them will say you do the creative, and you tell us.
Yep.
So, I mean, I like them. I found it hard because I didn't know what I was doing, but I think I would have a very, very, very different perspective now. And I'm in the process right now of working out a new brand deal with a company that I use all of the time.
Yeah.
And that'll be totally different too, because what we're doing is more holistic. You know what I mean? It's like all of my marketing channels as
Yep.
opposed to just my podcast, you know?
Yeah. And those are
So
like the best partnerships, I think, where it's just like,
yeah.
let's do something more holistic that like is gives you more bang for your buck. And it's like, don't just sponsor one channel. Let's do something more inclusive, but also like, this is a tool I like. And I think that's like such a blessing to have like a tool
Yeah.
that you like that's also willing to work with you. So I think that's really, really cool.
I think so too. Now, when you're doing all of these different brand deals, like so you started by just going out and like pitching and asking, but like, do you have best practices looking back now that like our listener right now can just be like, okay, I should start with this?
Yeah, 1000%. So I think like I will say like what's worked for me, but this is definitely not the best practices to do this. And since I have like gotten a little more like sophisticated, I have been trying to get like formal training on how to get brand deals, but this is just like what's worked for me. The like easiest strategy has been just sort of like I know the brands that I want to work with, right? So let's just say like
Yeah.
there's a list of 10 brands, right? I would follow all of those brands on like TikTok, Instagram, all platforms. And I would like heavily engage with like their content. Like, so every video they post, I'm commenting. Everything they post, I'm liking. I'm doing like a million different things. So like my first goal at that point is just to get them to know who I am. So like at a certain point, they realize like, who is this guy commenting on all our stuff? And obviously start with like the channels that are like newer. So for instance, for me, I'm going to follow your page on TikTok because I know most brands aren't going to have a big following on TikTok. So it's easier for them to see my comments. Great. Once they see me engage and they know who I am, and I'll know they know who I am because they'll normally like follow back. Boom. Like now we know each other. We're good. They can see my content. I can see their content. I'll keep doing the same thing, but at a certain point, hopefully sooner rather than later, I'll DM them just like introducing myself. Hey, I'm Lloyd. Love your content. Would love to collaborate at some point. This is so bad. This is like lots of like brand people that create content about like getting sponsorships say don't do this, but that's what I do. I just like DM them, just like, hey, I'm Lloyd. Would love to collab at some point. Super, super informal. They'll normally just like it or say cool, 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 but it's not like a real cool just yet. Keep engaging, keep engaging. It's like more of a marathon. At a certain point, if I do email them, so take for instance, like I'm engaging with the brand for 2 months and then I compile an idea of like 7 collaboration ideas. I DM them again on social media, say, hey, would love to collaborate again. Would you mind dropping an email so I can share some ideas? More than likely, they're going to give you the email, even if they have no intention of working with you. Once I get that email, I send them an email saying, hey, I'm Lloyd. I create content talking about this. Here's an example of some of the videos I've created before. Mind you, these don't have to be branded videos you've done with other brands. This could just be like your videos because they just want to gauge that you're a good creative creator. And so I send them all of that. And in that email, I'll also include like, I'd love to collaborate with you. Here's how I think that can look. Here's 7 ideas. And I'll just put sort of like a title and a concept, all 7 of them. And that way, when that person gets that email, they don't have the burden of trying to think like, well, what can we do? Like, what would this look like? Sometimes like I didn't used to do this, but sometimes actually, I wouldn't do that. I like, sometimes I include pricing in that just because it's like, I won't like directly say like I cost X per video, but what I'll do is include my media kit and that will show them more about my demographics, but it also has my pricing as well. That's not always a good thing because you at least want them to respond. And sometimes if they see your pricing and can't afford it, they'll just like not respond. So that's why I don't recommend you do it, but that's just
So
what I
don't
was
put the
doing.
pricing.
Don't put the pricing. I only do that if you want to like, I was only doing that to like weed out people at that point. So it's like, you know, if you're not going to pay, no need of us talking, just because I was getting a lot of like inquiries at that time, but I wouldn't start with that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I like that you said media kit. Oh my God, there's so much gold in here. And I think it's really important to like, let's just dissect a tiny little bit here. But your brand deal strategy is very similar to my pitch strategy for securing guests on podcasts.
Yep.
I think that like, yes, people do things through email, contact forms on websites and all that stuff. I also think that sometimes the way to get seen is to put yourself directly there. You know what I mean? And so when we're pitching, for example, massive guests, like we secure guests like 500,000 followers, 300,000 followers, 25,000 followers, like whatever. And they can be small shows.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's about creating that connection. And I think that is ultimately what it is at the bottom of the brand deal too. Like you're creating connection with someone and you're showing them exactly the benefit that you bring to them and how their product or service or whatever it is aligns back to what it is that you are also creating as well for your
That's
community.
such a great point. And I think sometimes like when people cold email me, I automatically assume it's a scam. Like I
Yeah.
think it's a scam, or I think they're like sketchy, or I
Yeah.
think they're not legit. But I think a lot of that is like weeded out when you've been like seeing the person on social media. You can kind of tell that they're normal. You can kind of get a feel for who they are. So when you get that email, your guard isn't as up. So I completely agree with that. I think like I would say too, just like two quick notes, which is the first is like this is a marathon. And so it's like know that it's going to take time and be like cognizant enough to like feel out that like, okay, like it didn't work, but how can I keep stewarding this? So with Spotify, we spoke for like 11 months, I think, before we actually like worked together. Just like, hey, I'm in this city. Like, can you get coffee? Hey, can you do a call? Hey, like, here's some more ideas. Here's this. And it just like took that long for it to work out. And then the second thing I'll say is like, people just need to also believe that this is even like possible for them. And I think a lot of people assume that like, I don't have enough followers, so I've never done this before. I don't know where to start. And I don't think that people assume that this could happen to them. But I think like anyone can get brand deals. And I think in the future, it won't just be like some creators getting brand deals. I think everybody will across the board. They'll just be like smaller, and they'll be like, there's more people that can afford to pay for brand deals that aren't even asked to pay.
It's true. And there's also something to be said about, you know, you used to have these like macro influencers, and they'll always make money, and there'll always be people that, you know, have that spot and whatever. But there's so much power in being a micro influencer too, and being niche down, and, you know, whatever that specific thing is. But it's like, if you never ask, you're never going to know.
1000%. That's a really, really good point. And I think as smaller creators, you're actually, I think like overpaid in context to like what your followers are worth. So if you had like 1 million followers, you would be paid on traditional CPM. And I know like you may know what that is, but like for the people that are listening that may not, basically the people pay you based on like per 1,000 subscribers you had. So you may have a CPM of $20, which means you'll get $20 per 1,000 followers. If you have less than 1,000 followers, you still might get $75 for collaborating with someone instead of the $20, which is from a traditional CPM.
Exactly. And so I will also say too, when you're creating these brand deals, are you only creating, I mean, you're creating for TikTok and for Instagram, right?
I like negotiate all of that on like per contract basis. So
Got
like
it.
the ideal scenario for me, if you wanted to work with me, would be that like, okay, let's do everything. Let's do TikTok, Instagram, newsletter, story, podcast. And for that, I will give you a discount.
Got it. That's my approach to it as well. You're looking at it like more of like a partnership instead of just like a one-off sponsorship of one episode or, you know, whatever. I think that's key. Now, when you're creating videos, if you're creating for TikTok and for Instagram, are you using the same video on both platforms?
I am.
Interesting.
So I try to avoid like creating variations of content, and I try and create like as little content as possible, but try to make the content as dynamic as possible. And that's something like I haven't been good at. A lot of my ads, I feel like ads, and the next iteration of who I am as a creator, it'll feel schemeless. Like you won't even be able to tell that like, oh, we're in the ad portion now. And if you look at like Mr. Beast had like a really good video that like sold out in like minutes, and it was with Shopify. And you could not tell like it was an ad.
I love that. I love that so much. You know who does this really well on their podcast, in my opinion? Diary of a CEO, Steven.
I haven't heard that.
Okay, so if you check out his videos, like especially on, you know, on Spotify, like you can tell that they're ads. Like you can still see that they're ads. But the way that he transitions to them is so seamless that you're like, wait, what? Like, and what have I been listening to the last 2 minutes? That you're like, oh, wow, okay. Oh, you're like, I like this product. But no, I know exactly what you mean. So you're kind of creating like commercials. And also it can also be too about like product placement in a very subtle way. You know what I mean? Like people who are like, oh, you know, I'm just creating X, Y, and Z thing today. And I'm using Descript to edit it. It's the only editing software that I ever use. There you go. Right? Like that's
1,000%. And I think that's like, that's such a great example. And that's key about like why I feel like when you first start working with brands, you kind of just like, I need a brand deal. I need a brand deal. I need a brand deal. But I think in like the second iteration, you do need to start thinking about like, what types of brands do I want to work with? Because I want creative control. Because say you did pitch that exact same idea you pitched, a brand may say that like, well, we need this to be a minimum of 60 seconds. So can you come up with another 50 seconds? And it's like, no, like this is what is going to convert the best with me knowing like who my audience is. And you need to trust that I know that. And so it's like, you do have to become a little more meticulous about those sorts of things once you become more like comfortable working with brands, I think.
1000%. I love that. And it just, if you even compare like podcast content that you put as like reels and stuff like that versus you going and like talking about your podcast
Yep.
in your stories, that stuff converts so differently.
Yeah, exactly.
It's totally
Exactly.
different. So it's like cool, and it's like good to have like the content. But I will also say that what I'm noticing, a trend that I'm noticing a lot, is when it comes to the content creation side in general, especially podcasts, like in studio podcasts, it's not anymore like these like heavily edited big whole thing, like, you know, trailer like this and that, whatever. Like those are cool too, but it's like literally like, you know, 15 snippets from the same episode
Yep.
that like all go out, boom, boom, boom.
Yep. 1000%. I agree. And I think like people want more simplicity in that way.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And also as a creator, you want simplicity.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? No one wants to be sitting here doing all this like stuff for like hours and hours. You're like, oh my God, like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, yeah. So, okay, for creators just getting started, as we wind down this episode today, couple tips that you want to leave with them
Yep.
to start with those brand deals.
Yeah, the first is just like change the way you think about brand deals. We used to think about brand deals as like things that we got because we had an audience and a following, and it still can be that. The easiest way to start getting paid for content is to become what we know as like a UGC creator. And what this essentially means is you are creating content for brands that need content, not necessarily your audience. So for example, someone actually pitched me on this idea where like, I would be creating content. Most of like the content I create for brands doesn't live on my page. It lives on like their pages. So that's like how I would go about it, is like I would just find all of the brands that are new to TikTok that I'm passionate about and just ask them like, would you pay me $100 a video if I created content for your TikTok? So it's like not even based on your followers. That's like a very, very easy sell. If they pick 3 videos per month, that's 300. If they pick 12, that's 1200. And you just tell them that you'd give them a discount the more videos they pick, which is what like how I started as well.
That is
so genius. I think I was selling like 6 videos for, originally it was like 2,400, and now it's at about like 3,000 for 6 videos.
Good for you. That's
so it's just like, yeah, try and get 3 of those. Boom, you got your retainers.
That is amazing. And then how long do you typically try and keep them on? Like for 3 months type of thing to see how it performs?
Yeah. And I tell people that like there's no contract, like they can quit at any time. I just ask for a 30-day notice, but I do like sign the contracts in like 3-month stints, both so that if it performs great, you can negotiate up, but also if you don't like them and you're not a good fit, you can like cancel it. So 3 months seems to be a good enough time frame.
I think that is so great. And I actually do this with my production clients.
Yeah.
Even when I first started my business, like people will say like, okay, so like how long, you know, what's the retainer? Like what, there's no retainer. You know what I mean? I mean, there is, it's like a monthly retainer, but it's on a 30-day contract. If you want to end, give me 30 days notice and that's it. Do you know how many people I've had leave my production company? Knock on wood. 2 in the last like 2.5 years. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah. And I think why do we assume so much that like contracts like make people stay or something?
Exactly. Because like, honestly, if you sign a contract and you don't want to do it, you're just not going to pay. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, it's not going to really matter. Like, you know, I don't know. Anyways, that's a whole other topic, but okay. Anything that we may have missed in this episode today talking about brand deals?
Yeah, just one thing, which is that like as nice as it is to have brand deals because it's like all profit. So like with similar to you, I do like some consulting work where I like produce podcasts for people and I have about 3 clients. The amount of money it takes me to make with all 3 of those clients working significantly harder is less than the amount I make just with like one like content retainer from a brand deal, because 100% of the money I make from a brand deal is all profit and I spend significantly less hours on that work. So it is nice, but one thing people should consider is that like brand deals may not be for them, because there are like a lot of aspects of brand deals that really, really suck. Like one being like, what if the company you work for just isn't good anymore? Like what if their product isn't the best and you still have to like promote them? You still have to like, you know, do all the things you committed to doing. And then 2, you don't have as much creative freedom. And if that's something you're not comfortable with, it's gonna, if you like, I remember one time I woke up and I had like a terrible migraine and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to put out like a podcast episode today. And then I realized like that episode had like a sponsor in it. And I was like, I have to like, that was the first time it hit me that like, contractually, legally, like I have to put this out. And it wasn't something I could just push like, oh, I'll sponsor you in the next one, because there was like a specific launch that was going out that morning. So literally I had to. And so if that's something you're not comfortable with, knowing that this isn't no longer like a creative art form, it's not like your job, like brand deals probably aren't for you.
Yes, I completely agree with you. You have to be able and be willing to show up. But I also think that goes too to like, podcast is a little bit different because that's a whole other thing, like to organize and all that. But if you're creating videos and you're creating content and you know that you owe 6 videos
Yep.
and you just time block, you know what I mean? You
Yep.
just do it, you get it done, or at least record them all and then edit
Yep.
them all on a different day, right?
1000%.
I love that. Oh man, Lloyd, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I wish we could talk all day about this. We could.
Yeah, we definitely could. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited for our next chat about video.
Me too. Thanks.
See ya.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode on As It Relates to Podcasting. I know this conversation was super valuable for you, and I want to hear from you. So if you loved all we shared, please be sure to leave a 5-star rating and a review of the podcast where you're listening. You can do that on either on Apple Podcasts or you can leave a rating on Spotify. I would be so grateful. All of the links are in the show notes below and links to connect with both of us as well. So be sure to reach out, say hello, let us know if this conversation impacted you in any which way. And I am grateful for you. Thanks again for being here, and I will see you on the next one.